Well, John, welcome. Welcome to the
Yeah,
podcast. You're somewhere on the East Coast there in the liquid sunshine. Where are you?
Hartford, Connecticut.
Oh, okay. How's your trip going?
It's going fantastic.
Beautiful.
Um, I've spent the whole day here resting and getting my laundry done. Got a haircut. Pretty
Nice.
cool. Yeah.
Nice. Well, John Donovan on the East Coast in the capital of Connecticut, Marty Keller here in Sacramento, the capital of California. Sort of a cap to cap
Cap to cap.
podcast today. So we were chatting before we hit the record button about many things. You made the comment, which I kind of got a kick out of. This is how we do it, folks. Here's the magic behind the scenes. I say to John, what do you want to talk about? And John says something like, all ideas lead to the tree.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's not talking about the trees outside his window there. So we're talking about the accountability tree for those of you who are relatively new to this podcast. So um, we've talked about this many, many times. Obviously, we've been doing these podcasts for over 3 years now, and the accountability tree is the core of the practice that you developed and that I work with, and I've been working with for 12 years now under your tutelage. Um, and the core of the tree is the power of the emotional body. The beginning of the practice of the accountability tree is to find the truth within our bodies of what's going on in the moment. We want to be working on some problem, some difficulty, some challenge, some pain, uh, some uh, something happening in our relationship that's bugging us, whatever it might be. The insight of the accountability tree is that the body has something to tell us about it. It's a place to start. And
Hmm.
so one of the challenges, as you and I were talking, is that oftentimes it's difficult for some of us, particularly when we're just starting this work, to answer the question, it's like, what am I feeling?
Right.
And you found this little, not even 2 minutes long video on YouTube, which you sent me, and it might be a good place to start. Does that work for you, or do you want to say anything before we run it?
Um, the accountability tree. You just state where you find yourself, your current reality, whether it's your perception, your projection, the it could be a character defect that you want to own or a realization. And my realization was at one point that I was violent. um, I thought that violence was physical, and when I got into a class where I learned about communication style, I also learned that emotional and verbal can be violent. So I got that I was violent, so I took that to the tree. When I say take it to the tree, I just say the truth of where I find myself. I'm violent, and that truth has encoded in it the pain or the childhood trauma or the preteen trauma, teen trauma, 20s trauma that led me to the behavior that I it thought was keeping me safe. It's uncovering, stating the truth about where I find myself uncovers the feeling tone or the emotion of the trauma that motivated either the behavior or where I find myself. And I learned about this working in Sacramento County Jail with violent offenders and addicts. And uh, once you own where you're at, then you have direction, and owning where you're at, the truth of it creates a feeling tone inside you, although sometimes you can't name it. And that feeling tone is a validation of the pain that caused the avoidant behavior. And mine was violent or raging or drinking or workaholic. That was a behaviors that I've owned. And in those owning of those behaviors, I found that I was immersed into an emotion feeling from my subconscious that was stuck in my subconscious. And I could feel it. Sometimes I could name it. Sometimes I had no idea. I just had this feeling tone. And then the other part of the tree is going in that feeling tone, going into saying what I want that's different, specific to what I had just said. Like, I'm violent, I take a breath, there's this feeling, this awareness that comes over me. And I say, I intend to be kind, or I intend to be gracious, or I used to say, I intend to be nonviolent. Um, um, and I find that it heals the pain that caused the behavior. And um, it's an instruction to this manifestation mechanism to seek and find where kindness is for me. It's like I don't have to do anything. It's like when I first said I intend to be kind, I had no idea how to be kind. I knew how to be violent and arrogant and entitled. And I found myself moving into a new reality based on the intent. And the intent said from a feeling tone place. So yeah, I could go on for about another hour about that specific thing, but let's see where we
Well,
want to go next. Probably play
okay,
the
then I got a couple things that
good.
I'd like to share before we listen to this, because I want to follow up. I just want to add.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things, and Lori is going to say this in this video, is the human body is an emotional tuning fork. The human body is physiologically designed to produce feeling all the time.
Yes.
There's no such thing as no feeling tone or vibrational experience. And the mind has the power to block out awareness of that energetic field that's always flowing with stuff
Yeah.
that we call sensation, emotion, or whatever. And part of the work that we do here essentially is to help us open ourselves to experiencing that which is already there, and which we may have
Yeah.
trained ourselves through childhood trauma to block out the feeling of.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
reason that this is so important is because that unhealed energy, which we call, or emotional energy, which we call trauma, that stuffed down, truncated, abrogated, and energy that's still in there, is always seeking release.
Yes.
And as little kids, we were taught not to let that happen for various reasons. Some of it was just overt uh, commands from our parents. Don't feel that. I'll give you something to cry about. Little boy shouldn't cry.
Right.
Whatever it is, we may have heard that from the outside. Or we found that if we felt something and we got caught at it, that we would have some kind of negative reaction, punishment or belittlement or whatever. So it's not wrong that we can block out our emotions, and we do block them out.
Mm-hmm.
This work helped me unblock that natural childhood defense against those feelings that I had to stop feeling in order to be safe in my particular household.
Yeah. Exactly. As
So
did I.
yeah, and as did probably most of us watching this. So we said a whole bunch of stuff, and she's going to capture all this in 2 minutes. So,
There you go. Yeah.
and her name is Lori Ladd,
Yes.
and so it's LORELADD for those of you that might want to check her out. On this is a YouTube video, and I want to wait here to make sure the screen share shows up. John, can you see her now?
I can't see her. There she is. Now
Okay.
she's on.
All All right, let's go.
I would say that feeling emotions is one of the most difficult things that we do as humans. I want to break down feeling emotion so that it can be easier for you. And you won't run from feeling anything. It's a very empowering place when you just allow yourself to feel. Okay, one, the body is an energetic machine. It naturally knows how to move energy through it. In and out, back up, in and out, back up. It's always moving energy through. Number two, there are two ways that an emotion, which is just an energy, comes into the body and is felt. One is a now moment experience that you have with someone, and it creates or elicits an emotion that moves through the body, or the emotion has been stored in the body based on trauma, a past experience that you didn't feel all the way. Either way, the emotion is rustled up in the body. It starts to move through the body. And this energy, which we call an emotion, which we label as anger, sadness, irritability, right? We label it, we have judgment around it. It starts to move and it just needs your awareness to feel it. As long as you feel it, that's it. Don't attach to it. Don't give it a judgment of good, bad, right, wrong. Just simply feel it. It will naturally move through the body. That is the way that energy, emotion, is designed to move. We're not in control of it. We don't master it. We just allow it. So pay attention to your labels of the energy or emotion, because that's what grabs it and keeps it in the body for longer. I love you.
Wow. Wow.
It's a
Just profoundly short and succinct. Just, and that labeling it like um, I'm bad, attaching the projection from my parents or that that having that feeling makes me wrong or an irritant or bad or, and this is the most insidious one, good. Um, all of those are labels and keeps it from moving through and processing through. My experience of doing this today is that when I do the tree, or now that I've done it for so long, I feel something, I just breathe into it. And if it's something in my current environment that I need to orient to, I orient to either the noise or the situation or something flashed in front of me, or I attend to it and just state I'm feeling like driving on the freeway. It builds tension. This is tense filled, and I take a breath, and it so my attention can go back on my safety instead of cussing, hitting the steering wheel, doing what I used to do. I just or something happens on the freeway, and it scares me. I just that was frightening. That was scary. Nice deep breath and move through, and I stay lucid in the moment instead of shutting down, going into a tirade, rage, accusation, projecting onto the other people, judging, blaming. Um, and I'm a lot safer on the freeway by being able to just let these emotions move through me. Um, this trip I've been taking, some of the sights have been just breathtaking. I can do that and pay attention to what I need to do as I'm driving, and then make a plan if I want to take a picture, stop, do it safely. So, and this is important when we do the accountability tree process. When I state an awareness, the awareness of a behavior, violent, let's say I'm violent, creates a raise in the raise in awareness is a frequency. It's like it's a short wavelength, moves into a higher wave. Just the awareness goes up, the frequency level goes up, say from a, I'm just using, I don't know what hertz, from a 80 hertz to 120 hertz. That's an awareness. That's a feeling tone, allowing this feeling awareness to run through me like I'm violent. It's like And I just went through a whole myriad of feelings right there when I said that. I intend to be kind. And the myriad of awarenesses was pictures of what happened between my daughters, my ex-wife, what happened at maybe first grade. All these times where I was embarrassed, awkward, and I lashed out, or I went inside and self-deprecated and blamed myself, where now it just, yeah, that hurt. And I let the hurt move through, which unlocks the subconscious trauma that's being held through, I want to say, through visceral musculoskeletal tension to hold it in, and it can release, and it doesn't have to come out sideways. And what I mean by sideways is me go getting a drink, me raising my voice and yelling because I feel afraid or I feel awkward or I can't say I don't know what to do right now. So yeah, it's powerful, powerful, powerful.
One of the most profound things I heard her say, and I think we've said this in various ways, but she kind of just nailed it on the head when she said, all we have to do is feel it.
Yes.
All we have to do is feel it. And what I got is how this childhood training, this traumatized training we're talking about, essentially says all we had to do is not feel it.
Right.
And so we're essentially taking that childhood belief system that's not yet intellectual, it's emotional, it's in the body, and we're turning it up 180 degrees and going,
And we're compacting it into our physical self, our emotional feeling physical self. It's I use this example of a like a 3-year-old sucking it up, and I've done this as a child, where instead of crying, there's this trying to stop it from crying, and it's
right,
actually sucking it in and keeping
right.
it. It's just it's so
Well, and
insidious. And
when you're, I'm sorry, I was say when we're doing that, we're traumatizing the diaphragm. We're compressing. I mean,
yeah,
we're literally using it for the opposite of its purpose.
yes,
It's like
and
we've commandeered it rather than let it just do its thing.
when we go into a reaction response like that, and it's an adrenaline thing to stop our body from, it's fight, flight, freeze, please. It's attached to the breath. In a fight, the breath is like you suck up a big bunch of, and you hold it and you freeze, fight, flight. Freeze is just stop breathing. And there's times in my recovery where I was um, uh, asked to notice my breathing. Well, when I noticed, I was real shallow and almost not. Um, and in this accountability tree process, you say the truth, whatever it is, wherever you find yourself, and wherever I find myself is a direct result of my accumulated experiences, making the best decision it can to keep me safe. So in that subconscious trauma, which is subconscious means it's not in my awareness, and yet still active in giving information to my decision making process. It one of the things we say in the adult children of alcoholics 12 step is that we recreate our family of origin dysfunction. I survived the trauma of being raised in my household, so my body says the way I survive is to continue to do the behavior I was doing as a child, which is not setting healthy boundaries. Well, I didn't know how to set, but not setting healthy boundaries, holding my breath, restricting my breathing, blaming them or me, judging and blaming, which keeps me out of my feeling body, which means these stuck emotions have no place to go. And then when somebody, I'll use an example, driving on, if somebody comes in front of me, I used to say cut me off. I don't know if it was a half a mile ahead, they're cutting me off. They're okay. No, they come in front of me. It's shared highway now. It's not I'm going to get that guy. Who does he think he is? I go right into judgment, blame, and I want to win. I want to be the first guy to the red light. It's like all that's gone. I'm well, I'm free from a lot of it. I can't say all of it because there's so much in there. And I have a practice where if it comes up, I have a way to relieve it, to nurture it, to validate it, which then allows it to move through and not affect or feed information to my decision making process that is a lie. I'm valuable beyond measure. In my childhood, I got that I was worthless. Well, I now understand that just being born, being sentient on this planet is incredible. It's like that's miraculous, and it's my perception, and I get to add to the whole and think about being in community and how to support myself and others, and oh my God, yeah.
One thing I'd like you to like to dialogue with and hear what you think about is the role of mirroring from our parents. So it's like we're not just spontaneously developing this holding our breath or whatever. Aren't we also subject to the emotional traumas that are manifesting from our parents in similar
Yes.
kinds of behaviors?
Yeah, yeah, we make them ours. I think Dan Siegel, Gabriel Mate, and a lot of other aware psychologists talk about mirroring as a child. If a child isn't mirrored what's going on, like happy face, joy, sadness, sad face, and it's not just the well, there's a socialization process that needs to take place from infancy to say 7 years old. It's necessary, although in that the what our society isn't aware of is that the child soaks up all the resentment, bitterness, and contempt from both parents if they happen to be there. Feels the abandonment if one's missing, and there's no words for it. There's no language for it. It's pre-verbal, non-verbal, and it's stuck in our bodies. Um, And the only way to identify it that I've found, and which works really well, is just simply say the truth of where I find myself, because that's an accumulation of my total experience, including the trauma. And when I say I'm violent, now it hurts, it causes separation, it's impactful, it's destructive. Yes, I'm not denying any of that. It is not out of alignment with what happened to me as a child. And the alignment happens, there's like Lori said, you just just take a breath, because in the breath, that's an allowing gesture to let it move through. Even now, when I said I'm violent, there was pictures of things that happened to me and things I did, and it was like a flash of a whole bunch of things. And what I understand now, because I intend to be kind, is that that was a release of the held tension around that. Now, did I do all those things? Did all those things happen to me? Yes, they never will not have happened. But now the energy is released and flowing, and I'm lucid and free of being tied to unresolved trauma. So, and the mirroring thing is, they did I don't know if you saw that video where they had a mother in a room, and she became stone faced, and the baby just like didn't, and then started crying, and then she shifted and went back, and then the baby came out of it. Well, the stone face was a trauma for the baby because it didn't understand it was mirroring, and it didn't know what to do with it. And then the mother's like consoling was a release of so they didn't traumatize the baby, but that happened. I don't know how many times that could have happened to me, to my mom being in a situation with my dad, financial issues, pregnancy issues. There was 4 of us in 5 years, no, 3 of us in 4 years, and then the last brother was like 4 years later than that. But she must have been overwhelmed with whatever, chasing one kid, um, holding a baby, and then I'm running around. I don't know what to. It's like, how could she know what to do? And all of that is riddled with some type of trauma that I ingested, that I took on. And the only way I've been able to release that is just simply say the truth of what my avoidant behavior is, or character defect, or irritated, agitated, otherwise annoyed, and just like feel it. Tell the truth, take a breath, feel that. It's hooked to a trauma. And then I say, I intend to be gracious. I intend to be kind. I intend to forgive myself. I intend to live the adventure that is my life, not have to live what my parents did and carry on the intergenerational trauma.
You know, as you were describing that experiment, you put me in mind of the work of John Bowlby, the British psychologist who developed attachment theory, and that was the kind of experiment that he ran, where he would instruct the mothers to exhibit certain behaviors toward the infants just to measure what would happen. And then as I was thinking about, so for those of you interested in checking that out, the attachment theory has got a lot of valuable insight that coheres with what we do here. John Bowlby, Bowlby. But what that led to another thought, which is that, you know, we really are the beneficiaries of a lot of recent research. This stuff is all basically post-war.
Yeah.
The trauma stuff is post-Vietnam War.
Yes.
So we are standing on the shoulders of some giants who are still alive with us today. Bowlby passed, but all that Alice Miller, all
Right.
those folks that began to open their eyes to this idea of the impact of trauma on children and infants.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we could have been having this kind of conversation 100 years ago. I don't know if we would have had the information.
No. And another one is Dr. Dan Siegel. He wrote The Developing Mind and some other books, but he talks and breaks down the attachment styles.
Right.
Been a significant help for me understanding my attachment style, which gives reason for why I find myself again in the same pattern of it comes from my childhood. It all stems from my childhood. And I want to say preteens, teens, because this compounds. If I miss a
Yes.
developmental stage in my infancy, then as I grow, I don't have a good foundation to build any kind of sense of self identity, as knowing where I belong or where I fit in.
No, we just replicate the original trauma in newer
Right.
circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we do it skillfully. And we enlist people who don't want to play this game, and we get them to reenact for us because of, and I'm talking about me, because of my stuck in a behavior. It's like they could do nothing else but comply and recreate this trauma place. And then, yeah.
So for the person that might be hearing this for the first time, could you just talk a little bit about what we mean by attachment?
A healthy attachment for a child is that when the parents leave, they notice it and can carry on. There's a trust element in that they're still okay, and then when the parent comes back, they reconnect. I had a what I call avoidant attachment disorder, where I would freak out if somebody left, and I got a story about that too as an adult. But if they left, I would go into hysterics, and then when they came back, I would pull away instead of attaching. And I was in a mall. I was 48 years old, and I was with ex-wife, and we were walking around the mall, and all of a sudden she disappeared. It was like an art thing, and I freaked out. It was like, where did she go? And it took me, I don't know, 10 minutes to find her, and I was screaming and yelling and accusing. And all she did was go into a shop, and
And
I
you didn't
lost
see
contact.
her. Yeah.
I didn't see her. And that was a wake up call for me that there's something major, something going on here. I don't understand.
So
Fine. I'm not, I'm laughing it, but it wasn't funny. And
not at the time.
That started me on a journey to find out why I do what I do.
So
And that was,
I'm sorry.
that was 9 years into my recovery. I was sober, and I thought stopping drinking would solve all my problems, but all it did was open up, and I could see how many issues I was dealing with through or not dealing with when I was drinking. So
Yeah. Yeah. So attachment is really about the relationship to usually the mother, the principal caregiver,
right.
and the spectrum from healthy, which means that we are learning how to be a human being, how to be a
Hmm.
functioning human being, as opposed to these others where we're learning to be a dysfunctioning human being.
Correct. Yeah.
And I remember when I was writing my book and I was investigating this, and I thought, how many people have what's the normal attachment word?
Healthy.
Not,
They just call it healthy attachment.
yeah. How many people have healthy attachment? And I was trying to find some data, and the only data I could find said something like 2/3 of Americans have healthy attachment. I'm going, I don't believe that.
No, no.
It's like, really? Okay. Um, so I wanted to talk about follow up on this because we're talking a lot about trauma, and I'd like to talk about healing. And one of the things that it came to my attention recently is that the accountability tree practice is a very tight, succinct way of beginning reparenting, because it starts with my willingness to feel what I'm feeling without condition,
Yes.
without judgment.
Right.
And that's what we missed as little kids. We felt judged, we felt manipulated, we felt
Yep.
repressed, we felt all of
Hmm.
these experiences, which, to talk in general terms, that's conditioned. We felt conditioned. When I
Hmm.
do the accountability practice and I allow myself to feel whatever it is it's feeling, like Lori talked about, I just open up, I just feel I'm in a place of unconditionality. I'm beginning that journey toward reparenting. That is to say, getting the parenting that I really would like to have gotten and I didn't.
Yeah. Yes.
And then the second part of that is, and then, I love your comment. When I then ask myself, what do I want? Feeling this feeling, what do I want to create that intention? That is also an act of unconditionality.
Yes.
It's as if my mom said, I'll sit here with you while you're feeling what you're feeling. You're okay. Um, I'm here. Maybe puts her arms around me, whatever. And as I'm sobbing or whatever, she goes, okay, what do you want? Treating me as somebody whose feelings, opinions, and desires are important to her, and
Yeah.
she wants to hear them.
Yeah.
That's that's one of the ways I think about that practice. When we're doing it with other people, it may be a 5-minute process. It can take longer, obviously, but it may be a 5-minute process. And in those 5 minutes, I have just begun the practice of unconditional reparenting.
Yes, absolutely. True.
And that's how because now, to go back to what Lori Ladd was saying, I now have allowed myself to let those feelings complete.
Mm-hmm.
No interference with it, just standing by, an enlightened witness, so to speak. And so now there is a shift. So that's one of the ways I've started to think about the practice is it's a reparenting action.
Alice Miller used that term, enlightened witness, and she talked about a traumatized child. If he had an enlightened witness, could have been an aunt or a grandma or a maid, somebody who just sat with and, as you said, witnessed his angst or his fear or his anger or his frustration or hurt, just sat with him and witnessed it. That's healing in itself.
Yep.
And she talked about some of the individuals who never had an enlightened witness, and names like Hitler, Stalin come up, which there was no relief. That was all stuck inside and no way to get to it. It was buried too deep. My enlightened witness was my grandmother. I had my grandmother until I was in high school. So otherwise, I think I'd have been either dead or doing life in prison somewhere for something. So.
Yeah, I think I've shared with you also my grandmother, my dad's mom, and I was the oldest of all her grandkids, and she had 150 grandkids. I don't know how many, but so once a year I got to go live a week with her and my grandfather.
Yeah.
And I got to experience what it's like to be treated like a prince, to be treated as important,
Yeah.
to have focus of attention and all of it loving. It's like, what do you want? What do you want for dinner?
Yep.
You mean I can have what I want? Well, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I'll tell you a story that happened to me with my grandparents in my 20s. I was facing a decision whether I wanted to leave my job as a high school teacher and go join this political cult that was a self-proclaimed communist cult. And my grandparents by that time had retired and moved to Florida. So I found myself in Florida, and I'm like telling them, this is my dilemma. Like, and I said, what do you guys think? And they said, well, we don't care what you do. We just, whatever you want to do, we'll support you. And
Wow.
I remember being utterly shocked because they were politically Republican, conservative, Nixon fans, and I thought they'd go, well, you can't join a communist group. And they said, whatever you want to do, we'll love you, we'll support you.
Wow.
So those were my enlightened witnesses. So the thing to bring it back home is that the accountability practice is teaching me to be my own enlightened witness.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or as I like to say, my own unconditionally loving parent.
Yeah, that's the 12-step adult children of alcoholics. Become your own loving parent. Is witness your own pain. Witness the truth of where you find yourself without blame or judgment. Feeling that and then creating an intent of what you want that's different specifically to the statement of truth. It's like mine, I'm violent, I intend to be kind. That's in alignment with the character defect or pattern of behavior. And to create a pattern of behavior that has kindness in it. So powerful, powerful. Wow.
Well, you know, it's kind of fun how many people I've worked with who will say something like, and I know I've said this myself, this is really simple.
Yeah, it's easy. It's well,
It's simple, not easy, is what I say, but maybe
right,
you
right.
find
It's
it
simple,
easy.
not yeah. Well, once you do it enough, it's I run to the tree. If I
Yeah,
driving and I get like a judgment call, and it's like, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm gonna take that to the tree because I know there's something still stuck in there because
right.
no, right. So
Yeah, I think you and I have talked about this before as well. It's like any attempt to change a habit. We've created a new habit. And we create the new habit first by noticing the old one. And not just noticing it, but experiencing it, feeling its effects, its impact. Again, going back to what you said at the beginning is we begin the accountability tree practice by just naming where we find ourselves and go from there.
yeah, that's stating the truth of where I find myself with no blame or judgment. There's two statements from the Bible that um, are pertinent to this process. Number one, the truth hurts. There's pain involved or awareness of um, feeling tone, pain, hurt, and then the truth will set you free. It happens all in the same moment. As soon as I own a character defect, I'm an alcoholic. I intend to come back where I can find help and be with people who are looking for the same thing. It's paradigm shifting. It's like once you experience it, it's like, how come nobody told me? It's like, oh my God, you mean that's all I got to do? It's just, oh my God, how come nobody told me? Well, not too many people knew. And a lot of people talk around it. And hopefully, my interpretation of this healing process through the accountability tree is a healing process combined with Gabriel Monte Vanderkolk, um, uh, Joe Dispenza, and the rest of them will come to some other place as a culture, as a society.
One of the I was in a conversation with somebody earlier today, and the question came up of therapy. And do you have any thoughts on the role of therapy in relationship to accountability practice?
Well, I give you my experience of my journey through counseling. I got certified as a drug and alcohol counselor, and my thought was to help other people like me. I've gone through the experience, so they're probably going to listen to me because I'm not talking from a book. And as I was doing it the first year or so, I was frustrated. And then I learned that a counselor's professional life is about 5 years. It's called 5 years and out, where you get burnt out. And I was feeling this burnout. And then I got the information that only 2% of the people who want to quit maintain sobriety, whether it's alcohol or substance, for 5 years. 2%. And this last statement was whether they go to treatment or not. And I'm thinking, wow, what? Oh, I'm a counselor. I'm the treatment field. So my question, based on this willingness to be accountable, is that if I'm a counselor, how am I participating in a modality that only has 2%? And it could be 2 to 10%. We could argue about that. It doesn't matter. 10% is dismal. So I asked myself as a counselor, how do I participate in a healing field that has this dismal recovery rate? And it struck me, oh, I base my value in how well I do as a counselor. When the thought just like dropped on me. Oh, that's the definition of codependency. So I was basing my value on how well they did, which means I was adding a stressor in their lives energetically, or however, it doesn't matter. I could have said it out loud. I don't know. And that's part of, I'm not saying it's the whole thing. And I'm not saying that the therapeutic field isn't of value. I'm not saying that. It is of value. And we're missing something. There's a lot of people dying from overdose. There's a lot of people struggling to get out of their addiction. And there's a lot of recidivism in the prison system, and recidivism in the treatment, like outpatient treatment or residential treatment. The same people come back over and over and over. I asked one guy, how many treatment centers you've been to? And he says, well, this is the 24th. Well, okay, let's create an intent. Let's make this your last one. And I have some information for you. So what I did was I went from helping, and I'm not saying I don't help people, but if I'm holding this term help and it gives me value from outside, that's codependency. So how I say this is, it is my intent to empower them to take on their own pain, their own journey, their own purpose. How do I empower these people instead of help them? Now, in the long run, do I help? Yeah. Oh, I'm not saying I don't help, but that concept in me was the stickler, was the sticking point. So it is my intent to empower these people, you, everybody I meet, to see their own value, to see their own power, and use their own power. And this is effective. It's attractive and it's effective. And when I empower one person, they have, I don't know how many people in their lives that get the benefit of their empowerment, and it just spreads. So, and it frees me up to say things out of the therapeutic box, like giving yourself permission to do that thing you don't want to do. Like and this is I'm going to put it in context, because it's like, oh my God, you're giving heroin addicts permission to use. No. Give themselves permission on that thing they're fighting. Because we have this principle that we throw around all the time: what you resist persists. And I don't want to drink leads to drinking, because it persists. What you resist persists. So I came up with this saying, and it's stating the predicament you find yourself, heroin addict. And the first time I did this was with a heroin addict. I hold value as a human being, and I'm a heroin addict, and I give myself permission to use heroin. That's out of the counselor box. And the first time I did it, afterwards I was thinking, I sure hope he doesn't go tell the people paying me money to get him to quit that. Because it sounds, what's the word for it? Permissive, in I don't know.
Sounds negligent.
It sounds okay. Let's start with that one. And what I found was, when I give myself permission to do whatever it is I'm struggling not to do, it shifts the focus from not do this to what do I want.
Exactly.
And this guy, this heroin addict I did in the jail, and I was anxious over whether he told my bosses. He came back after he did that, and I said, how did that work for you? he said, John, I hold value as a human being. I'm a heroin addict, and I give myself permission to use heroin, just not today. That man called me for 2 years, thanking me for whatever happened in that statement. He stayed, and that's the last I heard from him 2 years afterwards. But it gave him relief. So I used that practice, that principle in a lot of things when I'm working with clients struggling, whether it's substance, alcohol, obsessive compulsive behavior, and it works. And if I was to hold to my ethics, and ethics are how you read them, they're not like written in stone, that probably wouldn't have been something I would have done or come up with if I was trying to help people.
So what I always heard, the first time I heard you use that, I give myself permission formula, I heard that as an expression of unconditional acceptance.
Yeah.
Yet another way to give myself unconditional acceptance. Like, this is who I am, and this is my urge. I give myself permission to eat. First time you ever said that was one of the guys in the men's group who said, I didn't really want to stop and buy a donut. And you said, how about you give yourself permission to eat a donut? And your example said, giving myself permission to do it doesn't mean I have to.
No.
It's essentially an acknowledgement of this is what I'm experiencing. And it now puts me into choice, whereas before I was in compulsion.
Exactly what I was going to say. In anything I approach, the options, yes, no, or maybe. I don't care what it is. Heroin addict, if there's not the yes, no, or maybe, it's not really a choice. And that's what keeps me stuck, because I'm not at choice. And the accountability tree has brackets around truth, breathe, take a breath. You feel that. You don't have to know what it is. You feel it. I intend to. On the brackets, it's got power and choice. And what I mean by power is the availability and amount of choices I have in any given moment. And what I found, it went from 2 choices, and I'll try to be like, well, my 2 choices were hit it or leave it. Those are my 2 choices. Be violent or go away. Now in those situations, those choices are still there, and I have a myriad of choices beyond those 2 choices that I contemplate and consider, which is freedom. That's freedom. Guys in jail, I would talk about being free, and I'm not free. And whoa, your physical body is, you're right. You got barbed wire fences, you can see it. Your emotional and spiritual body, completely free. You can do whatever you want. You have all the choices in the world to do with those 2 things. Physical body, yeah, you're not free. I can look at the barbed wire and you're not free. That's true. But there's other kinds of freedom. So
before we wrap up, I want to revisit the therapy thing, because I don't think you're saying. In fact, I think you said explicitly, I'm not saying don't use therapy.
Right.
And I've shared on this podcast and with you that at a certain point in my work with you, I came to a realization that there was something. I felt something was really stuck. And my intuition was that there was some kind of childhood trauma experience in my body that I was having a hard time reaching through the accountability practice. So I found a childhood trauma healing therapist.
Right.
And I worked with her for several years, and I actually went back to see her the last couple of weeks because of some of the experiences I shared that I had on my trip back east. And what I found, and I was having a conversation with somebody about this who was contemplating getting some therapeutic help to deal with sexual trauma from childhood. And some things are so traumatic that they need the help of a specialist.
Yes.
But here's the thing, to go what you were to consider based on your experiences as a counselor. is part of what made my experience work with the therapist was I set my intention before I ever found her as to what I wanted to happen. It's like, what do I want this for? So that's what we discussed with this other individual. We discussed, well, what do you want it for? Set your goal. That will create the focus to find the right person who has the right therapeutic process to get you what you want.
Right.
Because it's easy. I found for years I was in therapy and I was picking therapists that never once talked about childhood trauma.
Right. Yeah. And
20
this
years.
is
And again, that was I'm holding myself accountable. I wasn't looking for real healing. I was looking for something else.
right.
So,
And the traditional therapy is changing. I remember 15, almost 20 years ago, going to a conference of drug and alcohol counselors, and one of the PhDs talks said, "We're missing something. There's something we're missing." So it was thought about a long time ago, and there's been a lot of strides. There's trauma-centered therapy. There's all kinds of different trauma-centered therapies that have this understanding that there's something in the subconscious.
right.
And what I was talking about was traditional
Right.
therapy, or the way
Well,
I
that's why I
was.
wanted to. That's why I wanted to make some clarity before we wrap up.
Absolutely. I appreciate that.
And we've talked about the book, "The Body Keeps the Score," Bessel van der
Mhm,
Kolk, several
mhm,
times, and there are in the second half of his book, he lists a number of therapies that he and others, colleagues of his, developed to help heal trauma.
right.
And it's still a developing field. And now
Hmm.
you have several states, I think the state of California just passed a bill which the governor vetoed, but several states looking to how can psychedelics help?
Hmm.
In Gabor Mate, excuse me, Gabor Mate has talked about his application of psychedelics in the trauma healing exploration. So
Hmm.
it's still a relatively new field. Remember, we talked. I said earlier, a lot of these things have happened in our lifetime.
Hmm. Yeah.
Since the end of World War II, I was born 6 years after the VJ Day, so this is all relatively new stuff, and it's still under development and exploration. So it's really exciting.
Yeah.
Um, as I've said to you before, I've been doing. I started doing therapy when I moved to California in 1983. So that's 50 years ago. 50 years ago. So I I would I would date the um, the moment that I decided to learn more about myself and make that part of what I was around to do to 50 years ago. And I've never discovered anything as powerful as the accountability tree
Yeah.
process. Never.
Yeah. I agree.
And that's one of the reasons I work with you and I work with others is because there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. And I welcome somebody coming up with something else. That's fine. I'm not saying this is the only thing, but this is the thing I found that has changed my life, and I want to be part of till I'm gone.
There you go. Me too. And in conjunction with other trauma-centered therapies, it's incredible. It's
Yeah,
incredible.
I just think that going back to that traditional thing, one of the things that um, many people report, and I certainly had that experience, is that we get into those traditional therapies that people were trained to do in the 60s and 70s, and it seems open-ended, and it doesn't seem to necessarily have a goal. And I remember reading somewhere, I think it was Ken Wilber said, many of these therapies are designed to help us, how did he put it? Help us live with our neuroses and traumas as opposed to heal them.
Yep.
And and when I read that, I remember thinking, well, that makes sense because that's what I was doing. It's like
Hmm.
how to reduce the results of those traumas rather than the traumas themselves.
exactly.
And nothing
In
wrong
the
with that.
no,
I mean,
well,
that was an advance over what we did 100 years ago.
in the drug and alcohol field, we even have a class, coping skills.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it dawned on me one day that no, that's what they got in abundance is coping skills. So it's like, how do we heal? How do we
Exactly.
eliminate the motivation for the need to cope? It's like Gabriel Mate said, it's not why the addiction, it's why the pain. And that
Exactly.
accountability tree goes right into the subconscious and touches that pain, sees it, hears it, relieves it, and then we move on to what's coming next.
Yeah. All I can say is amen.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
Well,
Thank
our time is coming to an end here, so I'd just like to make a pitch to anybody watching this for the first time, or maybe you've been watching this for years. Feel free to join an accountability practice group. We have 4 of them a week. They're all on Zoom, so you don't have to leave the comfort of your home or your time zone. We have a Monday night and Thursday night at 6:30, Wednesday afternoon at 4, and Saturday morning at 8:30, all Pacific time. And if you're interested, at the end of the podcast, my and John's emails addresses will be there. Just send us a note. We're happy to send you to the Zoom meeting address.
And if you send something and you don't get a response, it may have gone into the trash thing, whatever that's called. Please try again.
Yeah, or send it to both of us at the same time, and one of us will get it. So,
Right.
all right. Well, before we wrap up here, I'd just, as always, like to see if you have any last minute thoughts based on our conversation or anything that shows up right now.
One of the promises of the program that I heard and never thought I would achieve is I will come to a life I never knew possible. And through my recovery and putting together this material, I have certainly come to a life I had no idea existed. And I I want that for as many people who want that for themselves, which I
Can't
think
say,
includes everybody. But
yeah,
see,
can't say fairer than that.
yeah.
And on that note, I know that you're heading south, so wherever you go tomorrow, I wish you wonderful traffic, and don't let the New Jersey tollway get you if that's where you end up.
Been there before, yeah. I'm
And
stocking up on my dollar bills.
say again.
I'm stocking up on my dollar bills.
Okay. But anyway, we wish you safe travels, and I look forward to seeing where you are in 2 weeks.
Okay.
All right. And again, thanks for everything, John. Love you.
Okay, Marty. Love you too.